Hey everyone, happy Black Friday, happy Thanksgiving if you are celebrating. Today I am going live with Om Nair, who was the illustrator for my book, Lucky. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kristina Parro. I wrote this. I was going to actually skip this week because of the holiday, and then I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, I need to go live with somebody I'm thankful for. And Om really fits the bill. I'm super excited to talk with him. So I'm going to request him really quick here, and we'll get started. Okay, perfect. Om just got on. I requested him, and hey!
Hi, hi,
Oh,
how are you? Happy Thanksgiving.
thank you so much. I'm doing so well. How are you?
I'm great.
Good. Matt says hi, by the way.
Oh, hi to him too.
So I was just telling everybody, everyone watching, Matt and you and me right now. I'm going to post this on YouTube later, I think. But I was saying that I've been doing these, Instagram lives with different authors, and I was going to take a break from it this week because of the holiday. But instead, I decided to go live with somebody that I'm thankful for. And I am so, so thankful for you, Om. Like, you really did so much for me and for Lucky, and I just appreciate you so much.
You have no idea how much that means. I'm thankful for you too.
Aw, thank you. Okay, so let's get started. I want to hear about how you even got onto Instagram. Like, what inspired you to create like an art account on Instagram?
Right, so I wasn't planning on doing an art account. I had a blog initially because I was bored in the early stages of the lockdown. And then I brought it to Instagram because I heard about this Bookstagram community thing, and it takes less time honestly than writing an actual blog post. So I started posting reviews and craft stuff, and only that year I learned digital illustrations, because before that I used to do like classic mediums, acrylic, water paint, watercolors, all that. And I learned digital illustration, and the Adilaroo one was actually my first ever illustration full
No,
scale that I ever did.
that's
Yeah,
crazy. So, for those of you who don't know, the reason I connected with Ohm is because he posted this fabulous illustration from the secret, of Addie LaRue, which is the main character of a book by V.E. Schwab. And I was reading that book, and I saw his illustration like on my For You page or whatever. And I was like, this is so fantastic. So I tagged V.E. Schwab in that illustration, and she reposted it on her story, which was so cool. And
then we freaked out about it mutually in the
yes,
comment section.
yes, 100%. We were like, oh my gosh, like, this author
Exactly.
noticed us. I love it. I love it. So that was your first digital illustration ever?
Yes, I mean, I traced one something before that, and then that was the first full scale that I did, because I was listening to the Adilaroo book, and the imagery and the descriptions and everything is so rich that I just had to draw. And so I posted it, and I had no idea anyone would watch it or comment on it or like it at all. But obviously, you did, and that's how it started.
Wow, that is incredible. Well, thank goodness for that. And thank goodness
I
for
know, right?
Bob, because, oh my gosh, you seriously added so much beauty to my book. And
Thanks.
I can't imagine Lucky without the illustrations now. Like it wouldn't have been the same without you, seriously.
It's the sweetest. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's tell people about how like we connected and then like what the initial steps were in our
Steps.
process for deciding like to work together, I guess. So I
So
reached out to Om and I can let you tell the story if you want.
no, go ahead.
Okay, so I reached out to Om and I said, I honestly don't remember what I said. I think I was just like, hey, like, I loved your illustration so much and I've been thinking about it all of the time. And I'm in the process for beta reading for my book. And because my book switches between perspectives, I think that it would be helpful if I had some illustrations to kind of like orient the reader at the beginning of each chapter. Is that something you'd be interested in?
And I absolutely freaked out. I don't even remember waiting for 1 second before typing yes. But I also wanted to ask you whether are you sure you're sending this to the right person, because I couldn't believe it. But yeah, after we connected after that, there were some FaceTime meetings, calls, and yeah. Go ahead. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah. So, okay. So, for those of you who are watching who might not know, my book is based off of Taylor Swift's album Folklore. And I was wondering if you were a Taylor Swift fan before we connected and if you had listened to the album.
I'd listen to a few songs. I don't understand music. I don't go out and look for songs and then listen to them. I only listen to the ones that my friends send to me and say you have to listen to this. So, and all of them are Taylor Swift. So I wasn't a Swiftie before that, but I absolutely loved folklore, and the entire album. Cardigan was the highlight. And when you asked me if I knew who Taylor Swift was, I was like, hell yeah, I know, I want to do this. And no, and only after researching Taylor Swift, listening to her music for like while researching for Lucky, that's when I became a Swiftie.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, so let's tell them about like how we got the idea for each pictures. And also, I can show you guys. At the beginning of each chapter, we have these beautiful illustrations that Om did. I'll show a couple more. Um, but these were definitely collaborative efforts. I had like a vague idea of what I wanted.
Oh, you can't call that vague. That was a very sort of the the layout you sent me. That was very helpful. I can't tell you how impressed I was that you had such a clear vision. And like my respect for you just shut up after that.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
No,
Thank
honestly, I love that you had a clear picture as to how you wanted the sort of illustrations to tell a story alongside your the chapters. I love that absolutely.
Oh, good. So I sent I like this all took place so quickly. I had been thinking about it for a while, but then I reached out to you and then we met maybe that day or the day after. It was
Yeah,
really
no, 10 minutes after I said yes, we were on a FaceTime call.
yes. I love it. I love it. And then I think I spent like the whole next 2 days even though I was still in the process of like finishing up my book low key, I spent like the next day or something or 2 days like putting together a chapter list for Om that had snippets from each chapter and what I was thinking for the illustration, like some photos of ideas that I had. And I just gave it to Om and I was like, do your best, man. So how much you said that that was helpful and I'm so glad that it was. How much I know that you also did a lot of research on your own, like outside of what I showed you too. And I was really impressed with some of the details that you brought in that were specific to Taylor Swift or Rebekah Harkness or even the era of
Uh,
that we were
right.
talking about. So I'm interested in the research that you did outside of what I sent you.
So I wanted to stay true and stick to like what your vision was because that was very important to me. That's one of the, I think, key things about independent authors and self-publishing. The authors, it's personal for the authors, right? The book is very meaningful and has to be a certain way. So I wanted to stick to your descriptions, and I also wanted to do a bit of research about Rebekah Harkness because I didn't exactly know a lot about her. And the entire sort of that 1930s, 40s era, the fashion, how like everything, hair, everything. So I think I started the exact day after our FaceTime call. I listened to The Last Great American Dynasty on loop the entire night. And uh, and I'm big on making notes. So I have a huge book. I scribbled notes. I read articles. So the first thing I think I read was a Times article that Rebecca was featured in, the outrageous life of Rebecca Harkness, something like that. Uh, that was so fascinating, honestly. And then I was hooked. And then I made a Pinterest board because every good project starts with a Pinterest board.
So true.
Absolutely. For character inspirations and just whatever pictures of Rebecca Harkness I could gather. So interestingly enough, initially I wasn't sure if you wanted Rebecca Harkness like as a character in your book to be the same as the real Rebecca, like the illustrations. So I think I was going for more of a created character, but
Okay.
that plan was crashed out even before I could pitch it to you. Um, and then I I read a lot of articles. I watched a Vogue video, I think, about the fashion in the 1940s because that was a huge part of Rebecca's sort of extravagant life. And I think that's it. Then it was just listening to a lot of Taylor Swift uh, music, her interviews, stuff like that. Oh, and I also watched the documentary Miss Americana twice in a row consecutively. I don't know how it helped, but some things you got to do to set the vibe, right?
I totally agree. What did you think about the documentary?
It was so good, so emotional. I mean, I can't tell you how like inspirational it is, and how much I respect Taylor Swift after that. The scene where she plays the piano while talking about her like sexual harassment case and all that, that was so moving. I wanted to make an illustration and send it to you as a gift after this, but I kind of forgot about it.
That's okay. That's okay. I also agree though. Like I got so much inspiration from that documentary. And that documentary came out a little bit before Folklore did. And I feel like when Folklore came out, like I was already because I'd watched that documentary quite a few times, like you had, I was already like in that I don't know, inspired,
Zone.
so inspired by her. And I felt that there was so much, there is so much depth to her, and there's so much that we can all learn from her story, no matter if we are musicians, rich and famous or not. I just think
Exactly.
that there's a lot of universal lessons that that she has went through and like is able to pass along, which is just cool.
Very brilliant. Yeah. And I think that was about it for the research. I kept on adding things to my Pinterest board, researching art styles, but yeah, that's it. And then I sort of started the illustration and saw, like, added things to it later on as it went.
Yes, yes. So we'll get back to the illustration part of it, but I'm wondering what is something that you found really interesting that you learned during your research about Rebekah Harkness and or Taylor or history.
Um, Man, all of Rebecca's life, actually, just how much she was in the spotlight and how uh, I don't know how, just the way her story is told. I love the narrative uh, of like this extremely powerful, rich, energetic woman. Like, a lot of stories need to be told about her. I see a lot of books in the future happening about Rebecca Harkness. And Taylor Swift is just a fascinating person in general. She's the best human in the whole world.
I would have to agree with you on that one. I love it. Okay, so now for the illustration process. You started by sending me like rough sketches of each chapter and like what you
Yeah.
were thinking. Um and I like loved all of them. I think that you sent them to me and you're like, "All right, like what should I change?" And I'm
Yeah, tell me, give me
nothing.
criticism.
Nothing.
That was so shocking. Honestly, I have never worked with a person who is like, I love everything, go for it. Because everyone is like, no, you changed that. I don't like this. So honestly, loved your attitude, just amazing.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I just feel like we were a really good team for this. It
Exactly. Yeah,
like it couldn't
totally.
have been planned any better. And the fact that it
Yeah.
was so random almost is like even more brilliant about it. All right, we have a lot of fans in the comments.
Yeah, people in the comments are so nice.
Yes, Camille said this man is going places.
Thank you, Kenil. Honestly, thanks.
And Damien is D Travels 33. He said the man behind the art. Fire, fire. Great work.
Woo. Thank you, Damien. The travels means
I
a
have
lot.
gotten so many compliments on your art. So many.
Thank you. Thank you.
Seriously. I had this like display in a window at the Promenade Mall, which is in my hometown, and I cut out like little like paper dolls basically of your illustrations, and I had Rhea, Salvador Dali, Rebecca, and Pythagoras, I think. Um,
I
and
saw that in your stories. So cool.
yes,
Brilliant.
I mean, it was just so helpful to have your illustrations from a marketing perspective too, because it's hard to express these complex characters with just words in a way that people can relate to and grab onto. Where image is so powerful and so immediate, and people know exactly what you mean.
What you mean exactly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was super helpful in that regard. Um, but yeah, so Om sent me a bunch of sketches for like every chapter. I was like formatting my book at this point, so I was putting the sketches into my book like they were just black and white, just outlines, no colors or anything yet. And then yeah, I like had basically no feedback for you. I think I had a few things, but barely any. It was all awesome.
There
And
was just that one creepy finger one. the guitar. I went back to it and I was like, yeah, that looks bad.
It was like super long.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot about that. That's so funny. But yeah, I think that we maybe talked again on FaceTime after I got the sketch,
Yeah.
and we like talked through each sketch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you told me what you were thinking for like the colors, and it was just like great. So yeah, I put all of these sketches into my book. Like as I'm formatting it, I started sending them to my beta readers, and they were like, whoa, this is amazing. Like I've never seen an adult book with illustrations before.
Yeah, that was such a new concept for me too. Like initially, uh, but that's so interesting. There have to be more adult books with illustrations. Adults need that. Everyone needs illustrations.
It adds so much because then any pieces that the reader isn't able to visualize themselves, like obviously as the author, like you try to paint as thorough of a picture as you can. Um, but it just really helps, especially because these people are, many of the characters in my book are based on real people.
Yeah, people. Right.
So I wanted to pay homage to them to a certain extent, you know, like Rebekah Harkness is one of the most interesting women in history, in my opinion. But
That's
yet,
true in mine too.
no, like nobody had ever heard of her before the last great American
The
magazine.
last exactly, there have to be more people who are writing about Rebecca, and for how rich, how famous she was in back in her day. I didn't find a lot of resource material on her on the internet. There are very limited images of Rebecca, very few articles, very few featurettes, which is, I don't know. There has to be more stuff about Rebecca Harkness. Just putting it out there.
It's very interesting. Like, I don't even know. I don't know, but that is definitely one of the reasons that I thought that illustrations would be so valuable, because there isn't much about Rebecca out there. And so, in a way, we were able to bring her spirit back to life. Um,
Hopefully, yeah.
hopefully, yeah. And
We are trying.
yeah. And, you know, from what I know of Rebecca, obviously, part of the allure of her story is that like, we don't have a lot of firsthand accounts from her. You know, all we know about Rebekah Harkness is folklore.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
the things that people have
It-
said about her throughout time. That was one of the greatest takeaways when I read her biography. So there's a biography about Rebekah Harkness called Blue Blood by Craig Unger. And Craig Unger is actually still writing books. He's now like, he's more of a political, he writes more political books. I think that I have one of his books. It's called House of Trump, House of Putin. I don't know how
oh,
to say his name. Um, but so it's interesting to me that this book was even written in the first place. And it's really rare. There was only one edition ever published of it. And I wonder about that. I wonder why.
yeah. Hasn't Rebecca written a few books? I think I saw some on Amazon while I was looking for Lucky to send someone a link. Is that real? Did she really write it?
I
Or
don't think so. She wrote some music,
oh,
but she didn't
alright.
write books herself.
Okay.
Bill Harkness wrote a book, I believe, when
Okay.
he was younger. But yeah, Rebecca didn't write any books, but she did write some music, like a symphony type thing. I think it was called Safari, potentially. Um, but it's arguable how much of it that she did versus what she paid someone to kind of do for her.
Yes, that's Also, one of the things that stood out to me about Rebecca, she, a lot of people don't connect to like culture and things like art and music and dance and things like that. But Rebecca, even in spite of not being exactly related to it, she she was a patron and she supported all the art forms, and I love that about her.
Yes, yes. So for anyone watching who doesn't know, let me give you a short, like, little snippet about Rebekah Harkness. So Rebekah Harkness was born into an upper middle class family, and then she eventually married into the Standard Oil family, which Standard Oil was Rockefeller's company. So the Harkness brothers and Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller, which for those of you who don't know is one of the richest Americans of all time, super famous. But the Harkness brothers and Rockefeller combined to create Standard Oil, and the Harkness family provided the initial funding for Standard Oil. So they actually like had the same amount of shares. The Harkness family and Rockefeller had the same amount of shares in Standard Oil, which before it got broken up, because it was one of the first companies that was a monopoly, and so it was broken up by the government. But it was the most valuable company in America in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So Rebekah Harkness married this one of the Harkness men named Bill, and 7 years after they got married, Bill died, and Rebekah inherited all of his money and was at one time the richest female in America. And she did whatever she was able to live whatever kind of life she wanted, which was one of the things that initially drew me to her story. But what she wanted to do, like Om was saying, was be a patron of the arts. She thought that the arts were the most important thing. And so she Camille said, this story is wild. um, so if you guys have heard of Joffrey's ballet, Rebekah Harkness actually provided the initial funding for Joffrey's ballet, and kind of got Joffrey's ballet up and off the ground and toured with them for a while. But her and Joffrey had a lot of disagreements, and so that they separated. And she kind of stole all of his dancers and then created her own ballet company. And she would pour so much money into the sets and the costumes and the dancers, like hotel stays and meals, that they never broke even. Like, it was always a terrible investment. She just did it because she
She
loved it.
could.
She could, and she thought it was important.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because even though she did exactly what she wanted to do, and they were all noble things, her story ends in an epic tragedy.
Which is very fascinating. I mean, if you read the first half of Lucky, you would never imagine how the story ends, because everything is just an increasing trajectory in her life, and then it's epic. It's honestly epic.
She's like a shooting star that burns up at
Yes, that's a perfect analogy.
and like, yeah, and just the little embers fall everywhere, burning burning people. Because it's not just her story that's a tragedy, it's the story of her family and the story of the Harkness family, in a way. So this, super esteemed old money American family gets just kind of destroyed through Rebekah.
Yeah.
And it's just quite fascinating. So Om has read Lucky. I sent Om a copy of Lucky. So Om lives in India, which That is just so cool that we're living at a time where, one, we can even be having this conversation where I'm in Chicago and you're in India, but the fact that we could work together
Yes,
globally.
that's interesting. That's very, very fortunate. I don't know how else to put it. It's fortunate.
No other time in history would this have been able to happen.
Yeah,
So we're lucky.
we are lucky.
So I sent Om a copy of Lucky. How do you think that from what your research was with Rebekah and even and Taylor? So sorry, let me back up a little bit. For those of you who are watching this who don't know, Lucky, which is the book that we've been talking about, tells two stories that are told every other chapter. One is the story of Rebekah Harkness and her whole family, really, because the entire family, it's just so American. I just thought their journey was like the the ultimate American dream in a way. Um and then it also tells the story, Lucky tells the story of a character named Rhea Harmonia. And Rhea is America's favorite pop star, loosely based off of Taylor Swift, inspired by Taylor Swift, but very, very different. And except for the fact that in real life, Taylor Swift moved into Rebekah Harkness's house in Watch Hill, Rhode Island, called Holiday House. And in my book as well, Rhea Harmonia moves into Holiday House, and she uses clues that Rebekah leaves behind to kind of help make sense of the trajectory that her life is on. So I was just wondering if you thought what you thought about Lucky, I guess in general.
Yeah, so it was very interesting, and I was very certain that I don't want to read it while I was illustrating because, like as the research, because it becomes a research material and not the book. And I wanted to be a reader because, once you read like chapters in a jumbled form for research, you can never be a reader. You can never read the book for the first time and enjoy it as a third person, really. Right? So I was very sure I want to read the book when it comes out, the final piece, and you let me do that. And thank you for the book. It's so amazing. The parallels of their lives and just how the story is told every other chapter, alternating between their POVs, Rhea and Rebecca's. It's fascinating. It's beyond fascinating. And I loved your writing style too. I love how you take tangents and talk about mythology and maths and astronomy, stuff like that. I was curious, is that sort of take the code and everything, the take your take on everything, like is it personal to your lens and how you interpret all stories, or are there actual links and references to their their story and their lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, how I uncovered the code in Lucky is through analyzing the lyrics in folklore. And I was writing all of these things down and trying to make connections. And I was really interested in the connection of like Salvador Dali and just some other interesting things. And somehow I happened upon this book called The Golden Ratio by Mario Livio. And it tells the story of five. And as I was reading that book, I found so many connections between things, between lyrics in folklore and the folklore of the golden ratio. And I I mean, I don't know, but it almost seems intentional to me. Like that was the story that was trying to be told. Maybe it wasn't, but it's just really coincidental. Just I think that Lucky is the type of book that is gets better the more times you read it, because you will find connections that maybe you didn't even realize before. For example, Rhea Harmenia goes to Centennial Park in Nashville and hangs out at the Parthenon. And the, there is a real Centennial Park in Nashville, and Taylor actually referenced Centennial Park in her song Invisible Strings on Folklore.
Yeah, I've heard it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the Parthenon was created by Phidias, the original Greek Parthenon, and Phi was named after Phidias because
Oh,
he was like he put Phi in all of his artwork, and in the Parthenon it's like that's always used as an example of the ultimate like Phi golden number architecture.
that's interesting. Very. I didn't know about the whole five and Parthenon thing. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Salvador Dali was obsessed with the golden ratio.
Yeah, I studied his work. A lot of it, the it has to do with the placement of subjects in a painting,
Mm-hmm.
and the flow of the painting. And it said a painting that follows the golden ratio is aesthetically pleasing and has a deeper connection to, like, it connects the artist and the viewer of the painting in some way. That's very um, you know unique. And yeah.
It's interesting because it like I said before, it in and of itself is folklore in a way. Because it's but folklore in like the most grandiose sense, because this is something that has a story and lore that has been passed down through the ages of what perfect beauty is, and like a mathematical representation of perfect beauty, the most perfect thing that you can think of, and it's been used since ancient the ancient Greeks.
Yeah.
Leonardo da Vinci uses it in his artwork, and Salvador Dali was a huge fan of Leonardo da Vinci. But from what I'm gathering, I believe that Salvador Dali didn't know about the golden ratio until he was at a party one time, and he was talking to an author who had written a book about the golden ratio, and that author, Salvador Dali, his book. And then after that he became obsessed. And there an interesting thing about Salvador Dali is that there's a lot of video footage of him. Um,
Yes, there's an unbelievable amount of videos about him on the internet, and he such a unique personality. And honestly, like, he would be an obnoxious person to have around because just the way he talks, but he's an absolute genius. I mean, his work makes you think, and the more you look at it, the more you find out about his paintings. You can just stare at it all day and you'll still discover new things the next day.
100%, 100%. But in his later interviews, and like I would say right around the time that he became friends with Rebekah Harkness, and then like afterwards too, but he started talking about the golden ratio in all of his interviews, but nobody knew what he was talking about because it was like rambling. Like I'm able to pick up that he was talking about the golden ratio because I know about the golden ratio and I know about all the lore and all the different things that are a part of it. But he went on the Dick Van Dyke Show or something like that, some talk show, and he was talking about cauliflower and rhinoceros horns, and like he kept saying these same things over and over, and the interviewers completely wrote him off, but he was trying to express that he thought that this idea of the golden ratio was like the most divine thing that he had ever come across.
Yeah. Hmm.
It was really fascinating to me. And the more I learned about everything, the more it all connected together in ways that I felt like I didn't even write or it was like the story was there and I was uncovering it rather than me like creating a story and creating characters, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Hmm.
So it was quite an interesting process. And I mean, I don't know if I could ever write a book that I love more than I love Lucky, just because of the process that it took me on and how it just opened my eyes and my world to so many things that I didn't think of before. Like I think about the world so much differently now after I've
Differently,
written
yeah.
more than I did before.
And like as a reader, you go through like the process of reading Lucky in a similar way. You said everything clicks and it all links together the more you read. It's almost like solving a maths equation, right? Everything clicks, and once it clicks, it sort of creates sparks, and it's very brilliant. You can't explain it, but there's something very, it makes you feel like you've accomplished something in a way, the connections and links that form. And I don't know, there is no other book like this, like Lucky, and it's very interesting. I love it.
Thank you so much. That's like something that I've always said too, is that like I've read a lot of books in my life and I have never read any book like mine. I almost look at it more as like an art form in a way, you
It
know?
is like an art form. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Oh, honestly though, like your illustrations really help with that. And it makes me feel it like really brings it all together in a way that makes it feel complete, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I look at my book and I'm like, this is exactly what I wanted. And like, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not Salvador Dali or Rebekah Harkness or anything, but like, I feel like they would be excited about
Proud of
the book.
this book. Yes. I feel so too. It's just that you capture their energy in such an accurate way, like as accurate as one can get after their time, after so long. And I don't know, there's just this energy of like power, and I don't know how to explain it, but there's a lot of strength in this book that captures the energy of Rebecca, Salvador, and Rhea Harmonia, who you
Yeah,
created.
thank you for saying that. And I think that's interesting because I think I even say this in Lucky that oftentimes in novels, like when it's a character, like they're one dimensional in a way, you know. But when you're writing about real people, they did have energies, and they did, those energies I do think are important. I think that energy exchange is the fundamental thing in our universe.
In our universe, right?
And so it's really hard to capture that energy, like you said, usually, but it almost felt like I was a vessel for the story in a way where, yeah, it's just like their energies were almost flowing out of me, it felt.
Mhm.
So I'm really happy that as a reader, you were able to kind of pick up on that too. So I guess who's your favorite character in Lucky?
Rebekah Harkness, 100%. Uh, yeah, Rebecca, just absolutely powerful, strong main character. She's the definition of a protagonist, right? Like her entire life, the trajectory of her life, just the way she carried herself, the decisions she made. She wasn't perfect. She was deeply, deeply flawed, and that's what makes her interesting and complex.
100%. So have you seen the TikTok trend that's like main character energy?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so it's this trend where people
Oh, yeah, that
themselves and
one.
they're like,
Yeah,
"Oh, are
I
you
have
the
seen
main
that one.
character?" Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You're so right though. Rebecca is like has the most main character energy of
Energy,
possibly
all the
anyone
main
of all
characters in
time.
the world. Yeah.
Yeah, because she led such a unique life. She figured out a way to make her life so that she was completely in control in a way. She was in the driver's seat and she was like making every decision, good or bad, and she was able to do whatever she wanted.
Hmm.
What a life.
Yeah.
When I was started writing this book, I was working in a nursing home during the pandemic, and I was feeling very helpless. Um, and her story was so inspiring to me. Um, and I almost feel like I'm emulating her in a way with what I've done because and it's funny, like after I started writing the book, um, I had been investing in the stock market and stuff before that. But after I started writing the book, like my stocks really exploded and I was able to quit my job and focus on writing. And I, it just, I feel like my life has started taking an interesting parallel to the life of Rebekah
Yeah,
Hart.
and it's almost like a paradox, isn't it? That a tragedy can give you hope. I don't know how that happens, but it does because she lived her life very intentionally, and that's what gives you hope instead of like the end of her story. And I don't know, mind
Yeah.
blowing.
No, I think that there's definitely something to that. The intenseness and the intentionality. Like she was not scared of change. She embraced
Hmm.
it,
Embrace change.
just made with the change whatever she could, you know? And I think so many of us are scared of change and, push it away and want it to, I don't know, want things to stay as they are. But when you confront change and chaos voluntarily, it's amazing what happens.
Yeah, she ruled chaos. She was the empress of chaos.
Empress of Chaos. I love that. Yes. Her story is so chaotic. From when she is a child, like when she's a young girl, like you would never expect what happens in her story to happen. But at the same time, she was chaotic back then too.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah. Hmm.
Just like everything that she would do in her like in school, like when she was in the dorm and she was always playing pranks and she did crazy things and I don't know.
So, right, we think about her life as if, she got swept away into the money, like it wasn't in her control. She just got taken away into it. But she created all that. She was like that even before she became a Harkness, and that's very interesting.
It is.
Major, major main character vibes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. So let's bring it back a little bit more to you, Om. What was your favorite part about the illustration process?
Um, I think I got to research a lot that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to if I hadn't been working on Lucky. And that's interesting. And the entire process, like, I mean, I love the process, but just as soon as I get the initial idea of an illustration, I want to see. It's like a compulsive need to see the result because I'm impatient and I want to see how it turns out, and that's very exciting because I obviously know unless I do the process and go through all the steps, I won't see the research. But I'm impatient to see my own work, and that's that's crazy.
There's something so fulfilling about creating something, having a blank page and an idea, and then just like seeing the finished product.
Uh-huh.
I
Seeing how it turns out, it's mind blowing.
It really is, man. It is such a cool thing that humans have the ability to create.
Yes.
It's what sets us apart, really, from a
Mm-hmm.
lot of other animals. And the fact that it is so fulfilling and so, it just feels so good. I don't know. It makes me feel like that's what we should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
What is like a tip or something that you learned about like art or your technique while you were illustrating Lucky that might be helpful to another artist?
Yes. So when I started working on Lucky, I was very new to the digital illustration process. I was figuring out my art style and everything. I was actually using a different app, a different software back then than I do now. Now is more of a professional sort of app. Back then it was just whatever default app I had in my iPad.
Yeah,
So I I don't know. I see that evolution of my artwork, if that makes sense. And I don't know. For a tip, I guess figure out your art style. It's very unique, and it adapts. It doesn't have to be like a single form of art. It adapts, but however it adapts, it will be personal to you, and it will have a part of you, and that's very important. That's almost like how authors have a voice, sort of like how they control their narrative. So the art style is like the voice of the artist.
yes,
So that's very important, I think.
I agree. And something that I like was hearing as you were saying that is, so you didn't have much experience, but you decided to jump in anyway. And
Yeah,
I think that that is so important. Like, it doesn't matter what you've done in the past. Like, the past is the past,
just
present,
start.
all that matters. Take the risk.
Yeah,
Go for something that is scary or that doesn't seem like something that, you could do.
no, it just absolutely throws you out of your comfort zone, and that creates something innovative and worth looking at and worth appreciating.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. What is a lesson that you learned while you were
So I like to think I'm a perfectionist. I mean, I get really horrible about like taking care of all the details, and I get concerned and insecure in a way. Like if I don't get this detail about this illustration right, I won't move on to the next. And I have learned to let go of that urge, sort of, and just like keep going with the flow and not getting stuck on one thing. I don't know if that makes sense,
definitely.
but as a whole, once you treat the entire sort of project, all the 21 illustrations as a unit, it looks pretty good. But if you like, I don't know how to explain this, but
I, I,
I
I
learned to let go a little.
yes, yeah, because like the details are important, but they matter less than you might think in your head
Yeah.
that you might be
Hmm.
overthinking. And while writing a novel, like I had to do the same. Like, you know what I mean? Like I love my book and it's exactly as I want it to be, but like I know it's not perfect, you know?
Yeah,
It could
you
never
can
be.
still go back and be like, yeah, this sentence could be, maybe there could be this word over there, or this can be rearranged or something. So it will never be perfect, and you have to accept that.
Yeah.
That's what I learned.
Yeah. I think that our ideal is our biggest.
What holds us back? Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's paradoxical too, because like you need something to strive for, but you can't let it hold you back.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a beautiful lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you thinking? I know that you are still in school. Om is in high school. Is that what they call it in
We
India?
don't have high school here. We have till 12th grade. So till 10th grade it's school, 11th and 12th it's junior college, and then it's college.
Okay. So I know that Om is applying for colleges right now, which is super exciting. Do you have any updates on that?
No, the waiting process is just nerve-wracking, honestly. It comes out in February, I think, the decisions. So,
Well,
yeah, we have to wait.
okay, I'm so excited for you though, and I'm like I have a feeling that you are going to. I mean, I think things are going to work out the way they're supposed to work out, and
Thank you.
I'm just so excited to see your journey and like what comes of your life, Om. Like I'm just so glad that we connected. You have no idea. But what are you thinking for like career right now?
So I'm very interested in like the STEM fields, engineering, sort of that. So for the subject that I'm applying to in college right now is environmental engineering, because even in high school I'm taking very STEM heavy courses because I love science, honestly. Um, yeah, but I am very intentional and planning to continue pursuing art and design as a minor or a double major if I get the opportunity. And I want to do something that's creative. That has always been my like goal. I want something that's innovative, that's creative, that makes me think. I don't like monotony. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
I was talking with another author on Instagram Live last week. Her name is Gabrielle, and she said that in her experience, she finds that the most creative people rise to the top of whatever field that they're in. And
That's,
good, right?
yeah.
And I know that you're going to be successful in anything that you pursue because of your creativity and your open mind and your critical thinking, all of the things that I've seen like through your bookstagram and through us working together. I know that you're going to change the world, and I'm so excited to be sitting here watching. Would you like to illustrate like books again, or do you think, or like, are you interested in pursuing art on the side?
Yeah, I'm very interested in pursuing art at the side, and I'm absolutely excited about illustrating more books. I think I got one offer that I couldn't take because a lot happening right now school wise. But yeah, and so lucky that lucky so fortunate that lucky is the start of my career. But yeah, I look forward to working on books and working with authors. That's what I found interesting about working with you. As an independent author, as a self-publishing author, I get to directly work with you, and that's very special. Not all illustrators get to do that, right? Usually, when it's like a traditional publishing house, there are agents, there are creative directors for the book that you have to work for, and that doesn't, I feel like, doesn't capture the energy or the vision of the author as well, and doesn't do justice neither to the book nor the author nor the illustrator. And that's fascinating. That's great.
It's really interesting. I feel like traditionally published books are held in such high esteem, but I was talking to another independent author who was looking into traditionally publishing her book, and they wanted her to change so many things, like they major plot points, and they
That must be frustrating for authors, right? Because they would authors you put your soul, heart and soul into a book, and so much of your time, and you know, sort of lose control, and that's scary. That just gives me goosebumps for some reason.
Me too. And it's like it loses the art behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Literature is an art form, but like when we're making decisions on what to include based on what's popular or their market research that that the
It
public.
becomes a commercial piece. When art becomes a commercial piece, it sort of, loses its value a little bit.
Which is another paradox because it's
Yeah.
those are the books that end up becoming bestsellers many times. Um and it's funny because I think that there is so much value in a book presented in the form that the artist or the author, whatever we want to call it, intended it to. And who knows where art and inspiration and creativity even comes from, like I was saying before, it almost felt like I was just a vessel for this story in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have to change something that feels so right,
Right. Mm-hmm.
it just that doesn't sit well with me.
Mm-hmm. No.
So I've read your reviews on your Bookstagram, and you write very beautifully. Have you ever considered writing a book?
I have not recently, maybe when I was 10 or 11. I did start a book. It was very fantasy, a lot of magic, things like that. And I think I have those drafts and stuff still in my notebook somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always been into like creative writing and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. Never considered actually like publishing a book. People are so nice in the comments.
Camille said, "Do it, King." I love it. I think that like your writing style, your voice is really unique and really beautiful. And the fact that you were 16 years old, right?
17. Yeah.
17. Do you hear that, everybody? This kid is 17 years old. I don't even have anything to say. Like you just have such a bright future ahead of you.
Thank you.
Let's see. I want to ask you a couple more questions before we get going. We we've been talking for an hour, so we should wrap it up pretty quick here. But okay, everybody in the comments, going places. Love it. All right. So, what is something that you like to do in your free time?
I like to read. I read a lot, and I don't know. I have forgotten what free time feels like.
Oh my gosh.
No,
You've had like exams and
yeah,
I feel like you've
it's
been
going. Yeah, it's good time.
yeah.
But no, I like to read. Yeah, that's what I. Mhm.
What's your favorite genre?
I used to read a lot of fiction, fantasy fiction, that sort of. I've never read YA a lot. I read. I was in a classics phase. It keeps changing. It's very messy. Depends on my mood.
Me too. So I totally feel like that. And I hate when people ask me I always ask questions that like I don't even like to answer because it's so hard for me to pick a favorite anything. Like because
Yeah, it keeps changing. It's a total mess. I know.
yeah, it's like depends on what mood I'm in, depends on, who pissed me off that day. Happy. That's really funny. What's the best book that you've read, or what's a book that you would like recommend that you think that everybody should read?
I read. Have you read the Song of Achilles? I read it a few months ago. It's so good,
So
and the ending is still heart wrenching. And I keep talking about it keep making all my friends read it and make their lives miserable. But
Have you read
which one? I couldn't.
Circe?
No, I haven't. I want to though.
It's by Madeline
Mhm.
Miller too. So good. So good. She's
I want to.
a brilliant author. Brilliant. And
Brilliant.
I think that mythology is so powerful. Myths. There's just like a lot of a lot of psychologists and intellectuals throughout the ages have said that myths are extremely valuable. Carl Jung, a psychologist that I am really interested in his work, he says that myths make up the archetypes of who we are and who we can be. And so they're almost like a roadmap into our subconscious.
Yeah.
And
And I love how Madeline Miller. I love that quote, and I love how Madeline Miller talks about dealing with mythology as a book in her interviews. Like a lot of interviewers ask her if her characters are real, are they historically accurate, is the series of events, is it what happened? And she just says that it is a myth, and a lot of people think myths aren't true, but they are very true, and they are what you make of it, and they are how you can understand the past and predict the future. I love that. I love that about myths.
and there's so much deep symbolism too.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that was like one of my takeaways from my year of writing Lucky is like the details are important, of course, but it's almost like what's underneath the details is even
Hmm.
important. The symbols, the essence, the energy.
Yeah.
That's where you learn. Like that's what you
Mhm.
learn from, in my opinion.
And that's true for, I'm sorry, that's true for all art forms, right? Like be it literature, music, painting, and that's fascinating. And that's true for science and maths and things like that too. It isn't about facts or a series of events. It is what led up to it, and what the between the sentences, between the lines. What do you call it? I don't know the
Yeah,
phrase.
yeah, reading between the lines.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Mhm.
Yeah, it is so interesting. And that is the common link, you're right, between all disciplines. Like everything is related to everything. I truly
Yeah.
believe that. And the deeper you go into the things that you love, the more you find that everything is interrelated and everything is connected. And that's magical.
Yeah, it's the closest we can get to a miracle, magic, right? I mean,
It really is.
mhm.
Because
I
it's
think that's what Salvador Dali was all about. It's the golden ratio is the closest thing to divine and magic and unearthly power that we can get to. That because it takes you closer to perfection and understanding.
Yeah, and that's what's so mind-blowing about the golden ratio is it's something that previously was ineffable or that we couldn't put to words. But yet we were able to figure out using logic. That's really, really crazy,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
amazing. And that's why originally I had a different direction that I was going to take this book. I had all these ideas about like the Kennedys and old money, and I was going to make Rhea's story more of a like trying to figure out what's going on with Wolfie. If you remember from the end of the book, like the wolf is based
Uh-huh.
on a real life person named Wolfie. And so I was going to have Rhea like trying to figure out like what's happening with that. But then I uncovered this story about the golden ratio and I was like, this is the
You got to do. This is the story. This is
mm-hmm.
the deal.
This is it.
Mhm.
This is it. But Anyway, I feel like this has been a marvelous conversation. We should definitely, I feel like we could like get
We
on.
can talk for hours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally. We could like have a podcast or something. I think very simple.
That's a great idea. Podcast.
It's amazing that I found you on Instagram, and I am just so thankful. Like I said when I started this, for those of you who weren't watching back then, I do Instagram lives with authors very frequently. And this week I was going to take a break because of the holiday. And I was like, no, I need to go live with someone I'm thankful for. And Om is that person, because my life literally changed when he walked into it. And I'm so thankful for it.
I'm thankful for you too. My life changed too, right? I mean, completely. The direction of my career changed too after I started working with you and on Lucky.
So exciting. And you love to see that, like a mutual respect, mutual benefit. Like it's just, I can't believe we were lucky enough to run into each other on the
Yeah.
This has just been so great, like so great to develop our friendship throughout this year. And thank you for everything.
You're welcome.
And thank you so much for coming on and talking with me today. This was an awesome conversation. It'll be posted on my Instagram live and on YouTube. I'll probably post it. If you guys are not following Om on Instagram, make sure you follow him. His username is a.mary.gold.owl. And
so goofy. This is ridiculous.
I think it's so cute. I love it. But he posts great book reviews, amazing artwork. I mean, and also you just need to have a seat on Om's ride, because like everybody's saying in the comments, this kid is going places. Do you have anything that do you have anything that you'd like to promote, or like any place that you would like people to like find you or anything like that?
No, that's pretty much it. My Instagram.
Cool.
That's all it is.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. It was such a good time. Thank you to the people commenting. It's so nice, amazing people. I love you guys.
Yes. Yeah. And thank you so much to everyone who's even just been watching this whole time.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll talk soon, Om.
Yeah, we should do this again. We should turn this into a podcast.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like mythology should be our next topic.
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Rest of your day. Bye.